This is our kickoff. We have a new name for this series this year. It's called the Leadership Learning Series. As you'll read about a little bit later on, this is going to be a collaboration between our curriculum instruction department as well as our administrative leadership program at the County Office of Education. And in the past, these sessions were specifically in mind for folks that were clearing their credential. We're now going to open up these sessions to any leader, any education leader that would like to participate. So, and also we have members, as we did last year too, members of our preliminary program that were welcome to attend as well. But this will probably equate out to about every other Wednesday or 2 Wednesdays a month. And we're going to have a variety of topics ranging from like how we're talking about today of leading with core values and things that new administrators should be cognizant of within the first 100 days of their leadership. We'll have our next session coming up, really looking deep into some HR work that will be facilitated by our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources at the county office, Dr. Hector Galicia. We're going to have sessions that are put on by our curriculum instruction team that are going to be very specific into content areas, including math, literacy, artificial intelligence, art, social studies. So you're welcome to come to just one or to many. For those of you in the CLEAR program, you could definitely count these towards your professional learning hours. But again, we just want to emphasize this is something for really anybody and everybody to participate in. So please spread the word. And we just ask that you sign up via the Eventbrite so we have an idea of how many people are coming. So our intention today is to really understand the importance of core values in leadership. Tess and I were putting this presentation together and just talking about how this comes up in so many different facets in not just education leadership, but just leadership in general. We'll be referencing a book in a little bit that really emphasizes this just the importance of it. So we'll talk about how you're going to use that as a leader, how you could be intentional about communicating those values, exploring strategies for listening and building those shared values. And then also we'll have a little checklist for you to think about in your first 100 days of leadership. Now, it's not going to be as comprehensive. It's kind of impossible to do that. They'll definitely have some things for you to be considering as a leader, especially from a site or someone who's overseeing a program perspective. Tess, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself first since I've been doing a lot of talking already, and then I'll jump in after you.
Sure. So I'm Tess Johnson, and actually I've been retired for the last couple of years from the Dublin Unified School District, where I retired as their Director of Student Services. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work very closely with Joe on a lot of district projects that he was involved with me. And so really fortunate to continue that partnership. And so while I was in Dublin, well, actually, my career spans over opening 3 schools. I've had the opportunity as a principal to open a year-round elementary school in Alameda, a elementary school in Dublin, and then a middle school in the Dublin Unified School District called Fallon Middle School. And now what I do is I work for Joe. He's my boss, actually, which is really amazing. He's a wonderful boss, as a leadership coach for AXA through Contra Costa Office of Ed. I also am still working as a sub-admin in Dublin Unified and also Castro Valley Unified so that I can walk the talk when I'm with you and understand the kind of job that you do and keep up with what's happening on the school campuses now, because it changes. Everything changes constantly from year to year, and I want to be involved in that. I also am a executive director to a nonprofit called Innocent Voices, which works locally and also globally with people that are feet on the ground that pull kids out of the most horrific situation, from being child soldiers to sex trafficking to anything that you can think of that's horrible, but giving them an opportunity to be in a school, in a setting where they get schooled, they just get a hope for the future, and also a place where they can be kids and to learn and to prosper. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I get to work with Joe in doing some presentation. So Joe, you're on next.
Thank you, Tess. And as Tess alluded to, we definitely got a chance to work together. My primary background in education has been in elementary education, as a classroom teacher, as a teacher on special assignment, as an assistant principal, and then a principal in both Dublin and in San Ramon. And definitely had the good fortune of working with Tess. We did some amazing work to look at learning acceleration, GATE programs, SSTs, and 504s.
MTSS
So
too.
that's absolutely true too. MTSS and SEL as well. So it's fun to be able to come back together and work with Tess. This is actually our second presentation together. So hopefully for all of you, we got a little bit of the wrinkles out from our first presentation. But I now sit in a position of being an educational coordinator. That's my official title, and I work overseeing the administrative leadership program, which has several tiers. Tier one, or our preliminary program for people that are aspiring to get their admin credential. We also have the tier two, which is folks that are clearing their admin credential, which I see a few of you on the call for today, as well as tier one. And then we also have something called consultancy coaching. So if someone's moving from a position over, maybe from a site position to a district office position, or maybe from a director position to an assistant superintendent position, or assistant soup to a superintendent. We also have a number of coaches that help people navigate through those job transitions. And we call that consultancy coaching. So that's what I primarily oversee. And then I also, like Tess, do some coaching myself for our CLEAR program. So it's a pleasure to have all of you here today for our first session. And I think one of our slides accidentally got moved. So before I transition on to the next slide, maybe if you wouldn't mind really quickly, if you're comfortable with unmuting and just doing a quick introduction of who you are, your position, and what district that you're in, since we're a smaller group today. Or if you're not feeling so much into coming off camera, you could definitely type it into the chat and share it that way too. We go with whatever your comfort level is. We know it's the beginning of the year and all of us are trying to survive right now. So whatever you're most comfortable with. Kelly, I see that you came onto camera, so maybe if you don't mind, Kelly, a quick introduction.
Hi, I am Kelly Ayotte. I'm currently serving as a vice principal at Bristow Middle School. It's my 5th year within the Brentwood Union School District, my 15th year in education. Administration has always been the pathway for me. And so last year was kind of my first year in my vice principal position. And it was a wonderful learning opportunity. And so this year I've started my pathway to clearing my admin credential.
Awesome. Congratulations and welcome. I'll popcorn over to maybe make it easiest. How about you, Dan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Lenhart. I am currently a 3rd grade teacher in the Moraga School District, and I'm enrolled in the PASC program, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Dan. How about you, Faustino?
Hi, everyone. My name is Faustino Cadiz, he, him pronouns. I am a very recent interim principal at Cooper Elementary School in the Vallejo City Unified School District.
Woohoo.
Well, congratulations. That's a big jump since last time I talked to you. So, woohoo. You still have it all together. Good for you. Fake it till you make it. All right. How about you, Kathy?
So I'm Kathy. I work at Antioch Unified, and I'm the coordinator of counseling services and student services department. I am also starting to clear my admin credential. Been in education for 21 years now. Started as a teacher for a few years and then went into counseling. So I've been a counselor for most of my career. Super excited to get my admin cleared and just I started my admin credential because I wanted to work in the position that I have. So I was very fortunate. This position came up for me, and so there I am.
Funny how life works out that way. Last but not least, Dr. Reed.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Reed, and I'm an assistant principal in Dublin Unified, currently at Murray and Frederickson Elementary. And before this, I worked at the college level as a professor in the College of Ed, and then before that, taught elementary school in Berkeley Unified. So I'm excited to be working to clear my credential for these next few years.
Well, it's fun to put a face to the name there as well. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for making the time. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. As we talked about, we're going to be leaning into core values. And we thought maybe a good way to start this conversation is telling us your why in 6 words or less. So we're going to give you some think time, but your why could be what drives you as an educator, what you hope to have it drive you as an educational leader, or your why could be why you show up every day, to do anything, in terms of when you wake up in the morning. But thinking of this as what guides you, and it's almost like a haiku of sorts, because you have to do it in a pretty succinct way. You could do it as a complete sentence, or you could just have 6 words in there. But we're going to challenge you to do that. And again, since we're a smaller group, you could either unmute, or if you feel more comfortable of putting it into the chat, you could do that too. We're just going to give you a few moments to think about it and then tell us your why. And Tess, you're invited as well if you could come up with your 6 words. I'm going to say mine is supporting the next generation, and I'll skip a little word in there, education leaders. That's my why. All right, Faustino, providing access opportunities to my community. Beautiful.
Keep
Good use of
students
slash
safe
there.
and coming back.
One more time, Dan. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
Sorry about that. Keep students safe and coming back.
Beautiful.
Mine's not quite 6 words, but to be a difference maker.
Well, you're even more succinct in there, Kathy. I like that. Anyone else care to share? And no pressure. If you want to pass, you could pass too. We're empathetic here. Joy, mentorship, innovation, representation, safety, and breadth. So much power in that last word. All of them, but especially that last word. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Tess, did you come up with one?
Yeah. I all means all to a road of success.
Nice.
Okay, but leading all means all to the road of success.
I have to do my fingers there.
I probably did 7.
Yeah, totally. Kelly, did you have one you wanted to share?
I mean, I have so many. You told me to put it in 6 words. It's hard. I would probably be looking for that, but I mean, a safe, nurturing, inclusive place for our kids.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thank you for all being somewhat willing participants. It's a nice, simple activity to do with your staff, or even as classroom teachers, to even encourage their students, but just remind and recenter of, why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. All right, Tess, I believe I'm going to pass it over to you next.
You are. So one of the foundational books that Joe and I really got into, and he also brings it up at the coaching meetings, is this powerful book, The Leadership Challenge. And the Leadership Challenge is not necessarily an educational book, but it certainly brings it to being a leader in the educational field, because even though it alludes to companies and organizations and businesses, we still operate in some sort of way. The difference is that we do have the emotional piece involved, because we're working with human beings in their progress. When you go in, and this is what resonated with us when we were looking at the book, were some questions, because as a new leader and getting into a position of leadership, when you're walking to a position of leadership, whether you've been at a school for a long time, but you make a shift to being a principal or an assistant principal, or even a coordinator in a new situation, these are the questions that come to mind when with the people that you're leading. And I'm sure that it comes to mind when you get a new leader that is going to lead you in your school. So that's What are your values? What does that person stand for and believe in? How are they going to make the decisions? Why do you want to do this job? You want to know why do they want to do this job? That's real important. What qualifies them for the job? And what do you believe in about the field and history about how are they going to treat us when, as a leader, how are you going to treat us once you become our boss or our supervisor? So these are the different pieces that we looked at that were just so important to know when you become a leader, that these are the things that are on people's mind. Next
Yeah, and
slide.
I think one of the slides got put out of place. So I'm going to jump past that one and jump right to this one here, Tess.
Oh, okay, great. And so we were looking at a video that really hones in on what leadership is all about and why core values are important. And I just, out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of Simon Sinek? Okay, other than Joe.
Sorry, I have.
Simon, well, so going back into a school leader, the thing about being a school leader is that your word matters, your action matters, whether it be in high stakes or, in the midst of pressure or competing priorities or shifting expectation, because you have to keep shifting and every day it may change. And so what sticks with you is your core value. And this clip from Cynic challenges us to consider what we truly believe in, not just only professionally, but personally. And also it is about walking the talk, modeling behaviors that we model and we protect. And so as you watch this video, I'm going to ask you to think about some thoughts as you watch the video. For example, number one, what quote or idea from the video stood out to you most and why? Number one. Number two, how does Cynic define core values and how does that compare to how schools typically define them? And three, what is the difference between a value being important and a value being your core? Okay.
I'm putting those into the chat.
Are you putting it into a chat?
Yeah, and I also put a document in there too that Tess had created that you might want to look at later on. Just kind of further thinking along this. But are you okay if I go ahead and start that video, Tess?
Yeah, well, going back to the reflection of your core values, that document that's there, if you take the time to really take a look at step by step, because it goes through some reflective questions to the end question, which is, what do you truly believe in? And so that'll bring you to that. But as you're watching this, go ahead and think of those three thoughts and jot down some ideas. Go ahead, go.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight.
Tess, do you want to have them go into breakout rooms, or do you want to, and you're on mute, just a heads up. You're on mute, Tess.
I think it would be wonderful to go into breakout rooms and to do some discussion among yourself about, you know, what quote or idea stood out for you the most and why, and how does Cynic define core values, and what's important, what, you know, why is a value being important and a value being core? What's the difference between them, and how does it resonate with you as a leader? So let's do that. Maybe 5 minutes, Joe.
You got it. Yep.
That was just some wonderful conversations we had.
Here, let me start our recording back up here. I guess it was recording, so I'll have to edit that part out. Oh well. I thought I hit pause, but I didn't.
Yeah.
It looks
All
like
right. So is everyone back? I think so.
I think room number 2, I saw that we had Shirley joining us, so I had to leave a little bit earlier, but I think everyone's back now.
Wonderful. So let me let's do a really quick share out. Any share out that was just something that you wanted to share out with the group that was you know, what stood out for you in the video? Anyone would like to share out from any of the rooms? How about room 1?
You're just jumping in hot. All right, who wants to? All right, room 1, go.
Yay, Marvin.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's called being voluntold, Tess. That's
Yeah, I was like, what happens to seek first to understand before being understand?
Process time.
Marvin, I have met you. I have met you before, and yes, you volunteered. Go ahead.
So something that was brought up, we talked about critical care. So Kelly had brought up, you know, just making sure every student gets, you know, served and safety, and that made me think of like, yeah, critical care, and especially for us leaders, like if this doesn't work, try something else. Like just really trying to troubleshoot. Okay, if this isn't working, like what's gonna make sure what are the other options? Like there can't be just okay, we ran out. We know how to like figure it out. There's got to be some other way to serve this kid, especially if we are talking about, you know, full inclusion and in the different tiers and making sure that all students get what they need and not just giving up. And so that really drove me to think back to the video where I was like, I wrote down the why. So the core values drive your leadership. I said, also they help you lead, you know, obviously the mission and vision of whatever organization you're with. But I said, if you stand true in those core values, they will impact every decision you make. So if your core value is care, okay, that's always gonna be in your head with every decision. And these things can have, I say things can have importance, but those core values come from a place of passion. And that's where I stopped in there.
Perfect. Thank you, Marvin. Anyone from group 1? Dan, you said something that resonated with a lot of people. Do you want to share out?
Mentioned important versus core. I thought important was working for a paycheck and core was blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else would like to share out? Okay. If not, let's just go back to the video or to the slide deck, Joe.
You got it. Let me pull it back up here.
Okay.
You see it now, Tess?
I see it. Thank you very much. So, why do we start with your core values? Because they matter. Because you can't hide from your core value. And I have been in this business quite a long time. And if you don't have that, or you don't have anything to stand on, you're not going to last very long in this job. I have seen many people that come in highly skilled, that's the structure part, but they don't have their core value in place. And so that they sound very confusing. Their affect is really, oh, I think I lost everyone.
No, we still got you.
Oh, it's interesting because I lost video. Okay, I'm going to continue on. So in any case, it matters. There isn't an owner's manual that is in place. And so that core value will give you the foundation for your leadership. It's an identity, it's in a culture, it's about relationship, and it's all about building trust. And also, most importantly is people that follow you, they'll follow you and to the ends of the world if your core value matters to them and you've shared it with them. Do you want to go to the next slide, Joe?
Sure.
So the step one is to identify your value, and that's what we're going to ask you to do. So you have started with just those 6 words to identify your why. So now it's a question is, what do you believe in? As a leader, I believe in what? And so going to the next slide, Joe.
Well, I think the next slide is then for them to share out those values there.
I put
Did you want to jump
down,
there already?
yeah, to the core value that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could just jot down one core value that's non-negotiable, this is your true north. What do you value the most as far as your core and your belief and the way you walk the talk as a leader?
And I know
Go
some
ahead
of
and do
you,
that.
when we're in our breakouts, I was just going to say briefly, I know sometimes it's hard to immediately write down what that value is going to be, but as we said on the previous slide, what drives you? But then sometimes if you're feeling really frustrated or angry about something, it's important to reflect on why in that instance too, because obviously one of your core values is being touched upon when you're feeling really angry or frustrated. And then think about times that you've been on a real, amazing and synergized team, and then a time that you haven't been. So just thinking about that, sometimes it might be helpful to identify that one core value.
So go ahead and do that. I'm sorry, Joe, I lost my screen went black.
Okay. Well, I could
I'm
take the
back.
reins here because I think it's about
Why don't you do
turn.
that?
Yeah.
Why don't you do that?
And
I'm trying to get back online.
we've done a lot of sharing already in terms of sharing out, but I think it's important for you to start to be able to identify and list those. And I know Hamilton's a little passe now, but when Tess and I were putting this together, we were kind of reminded of the conversation that Alexander Hamilton has with Aaron Burr in the play, and it actually comes from a Hamilton quote, and it's paraphrased in the musical. But if you stand for nothing, Burr, what will you fall for? And I think that really resonates in education because you're going to be tasked, and many of you are already in leadership positions, you have been tasked with challenges. And not every hill is a hill to die on. But if you don't lean into those core values and identify what those core values are going to be, and eventually build a consensus with your staff and your community on those values, you're going to find every instance that comes forward as a potential moral dilemma for you. So it's really concerning, and people are looking to you in your leadership, and to see not only that you're stating what you value, what your values are, but also that you're living what your values are. And we'll talk about that more on this slide here. And that's how you begin to communicate and act in your values. So I know some of you are in a position that you're now going into your second year in your position. Some of you are coming into program positions. Some of you are now just walking into leadership positions. But it's never too late to continue to communicate and act in those values. So think about how you're doing that in what you do and also in what you don't do. So you could think of and how that could be a positive, but also how it could be that there could be some negatives. If you have a staff member that's really undermining or speaking out in a difficult way during a staff meeting, how you address that is definitely going to speak to your values. Or that staff member or student that is demonstrating some concerns, right? And how you address that or don't address that says a lot about your values. So it's really important to think about how once you step into this role as administrator, fair or not, all eyes are on you and how you're going to respond to certain situations. And some of that might be just rolling up your sleeves. And it's a situation when your custodian is just completely understaffed, and you're going to get in there with your custodian and help them out, and how you're going to live some of your values by, again, your actions and what you do. So as this is geared towards, the beginning of the year and some of you coming into positions, some of these things are things that you likely have done already, but some of you that are just kind of coming into your positions maybe haven't done this already entirely, but really thinking about how you've introduced yourself to your staff in terms of initial communication. If you're an assistant principal role, what is that going to look like in terms of the ongoing communication that you have with your staff? Is that more your principal's lead, or is that something that you could also take part in and have some sort of communication on a regular basis with your staff? Or from a program standpoint, how are you going to be communicating on a regular basis with your staff? What could they anticipate in terms of updates? But also, what does that look like in terms of regular accolades? Right? In terms of feedback that you're going to give. Is it going to be post-it notes that you're dropping off in the classroom? Is it going to be emails that you're providing? Just be thinking about that and thinking about how you're going to do that consistently. And again, for those of you in site positions or in positions that oversee both certificated and classified, really, really make sure that all staff is included in your ongoing communication. That there's sometimes a natural divide that seems to take place between our classified and certificated staff members. But how are you regularly communicating with your custodial, your child nutrition, your classroom aides? Because they're not always going to be participating in your department or site level meetings. So do you have a method of communication to really help them feel connected and also understanding where you're coming from, but also feeling as if they're valued as well? Same thing for all of our other constituents, thinking about our students. What type of communication are you planning to have with them? Ones in ways that, again, you could address your values, but also just ongoing communication as well. Is it through your announcements, assemblies? Is it being out during passing periods, recess, before school, after school? What type of ongoing communication and messaging will you have for your students? And then on the broader scale, your community, right? And not just the newsletter itself, but we also have our social media, we have our phone calls. But are you putting yourself out there to really come to the community? And these are kind of more the generic ideas, but are there ways that you could be reaching out to people that maybe don't feel as comfortable on campus, and how could you creatively do that? But again, this all ties down to those core values that you've established, and we talked about in our breakout room of making sure every student feels seen and heard. How are we doing that? Interactions with our staff, in our interactions with our students, in our interactions with our community.
Could I add a couple of pieces, Joe, here as
Sure.
well? Those unstructured times that you are on campus says a lot about your core values also. And you glean a lot of information from your staff and also from the students regarding the culture of the school, and not only the culture of the school, the way they're feeling about what you have put out there, and make sure that there's an understanding to why you put and why you do what you do. And those informal, I guess, face to face, as as you're walking along and checking the school out, the important thing is to greet everyone. Because I'm going to tell you, if you pass by a student, you don't greet them, or a teacher, you don't greet them, that becomes conversations in the staff room. That becomes something that becomes a social event on social media. I've been there where my mind is about the school and I'm walking through the campus and a parent walks by, and all of a sudden I hear on social media that I have dissed the parent. So you are a walking, talking billboard for your school and what you do and what you represent. So keep that in mind and show up at every opportunity that you can. Don't be in your office, be on campus at those important piece times. So I just wanted to share that.
No,
And
thank you,
also,
Tessa.
yeah.
That just reminds me as you shared that too. When I started off my second principalship, I really wanted to get into classrooms and leave notes and just really get the staff comfortable with me being present. And it was funny because in essence, what you thought would be a very positive and relationship building started at bring up some questions because I hadn't been to everyone's classroom within the first day. Well, how come he went to your classroom and left a note, but didn't go to my classroom and leave a note? So again, those are kind of one-offs from there, but it's again what's communicated sometimes when it's not intended to be communicated. That's important to consider in your leadership. Okay, well, moving on to the next slide. I'm sure many of you have engaged in these already, but it's really important to build your understanding of your site and your culture so you can look for opportunities of shared core values through listening, or what we sometimes called empathy interviews. Again, in a program, it can be just as valuable as well to have the opportunity to make the time. And if you're not able to do it entirely by the beginning of the school year, that's fine. It could be something that carries out into the fall, and just be transparent with your staff about what you're hoping to do, just to get to know them a little bit more, for them to get to know you a little bit. The idea is when you can engage in these listening interviews, that you really keep your talking to a minimum. So maybe just a quick overview of yourself, but really leaning into consistent questions that you're going to ask everybody. And again, this could go from your classified to your certificated staff, really getting to know the culture and the dynamics and things that are challenging them. So, the questions that we often will lean into is, what do you love about the school or the program? What is one thing that you would absolutely want to see that we keep? And then is one thing, if you had a magic wand, that you would maybe want to see change. And it doesn't mean that you have to act on those right away. Again, this is you doing some research, learning, and gathering. And again, looking at myself in the mirror, when I jumped into this position as a coordinator, it should have been obvious to me, but when I came into this position, I had 40 or 50 coaches. Someone reminded me of, hey, Joe, you might want to do those same listening or empathy interviews with your coaches that you did at the site level. And then again, it gave me so much information about what was working well, challenges that they were facing, things that they would not want to see changed, things that we might want to consider. So again, you don't have to be driven to make immediate changes, but really think of your first year as an opportunity to be researching and really understanding the dynamics of your school, almost like someone who would be out in the field watching wildlife and really taking notes and learning about things. That's kind of what your goal is in the first year. And if something is really at the detriment and might impact student safety, obviously consider making changes. But really, it's an opportunity to learn about them. So Tess, I'm just going to do a quick time check because we only have 10 minutes left and see where we wanted to go. Do we want to pause for a second and see if anyone has any questions, or we do also have those last couple slides of things they might want to consider as we wrap up the school year? I'm kind of inclined to say that we should move forward and then come back with questions at the very end.
That would work, because we can go through the checks, the check-in slides really quickly.
Perfect.
And then come back to that.
Yeah, we've gotten feedback over time that people really do like to have the opportunity to talk and process. That's why we want to honor that as much as possible. You're going to get a copy of this slide deck. We'll email it to you, but we could also put it in the chat at the very end as well. But things for you to be considering in your first 100 days in terms of your planning. I know that we're already in August, so some of these things have likely been done already, but just some friendly reminders. I'm not going to read every bullet point, I promise. But one thing that we see, especially in sites, but sometimes with programs too, is websites that haven't been brought up to speed. And it might seem minor, but your parents, your community members, your education partners are going to that as a resource. So I would just strongly encourage to make sure that your website's up to date. All of your school year information is up to date. If you're a new administrator, that you've really done a deep dive and looked for all the opportunities where your name should be on there. And then a lower tier that you want to be working with your staff is making sure that all of their pages are up to speed, so you don't have someone with information for 2022 school year. And then again, thinking about opportunities to meet and greet with your staff, your students, your parents, and community, especially for those of you who are in new positions, being cognizant of making sure that you're out there, you're present, and they're really getting a chance to see and meet who you are. And then also be thinking about who your core leadership team members are internally with your school or your program, and having an opportunity to meet and engage with them. And then if you haven't, making sure to write a welcome letter to your community and to your staff so they kind of have an idea of who you are, and kind of, again, when we look back at that first slide that Tess shared, who are you? Why are you in this position? And how do you make your decisions? All those kind of things. So really start to do an introduction to your community. As
Could
we
I
start
just jump? I'm going
Go
to
ahead,
jump
Tess.
in with
Yes.
this. Yeah, I'm sorry. So one thing that we did leave off, which are real important pieces actually too, is know your contracts. Know your teacher contract and know your classified contract. Those are key, because if anything, if you miss out um, on doing something that's against a contract, they'll come after you. So know those two contracts and have them on your desk and know them. And before you make major decisions, check your contract before you do that. Even when you're setting your dates, your schedule for the year, that becomes a foundational piece that you should know. And then policies and procedures that are in board policy, et cetera. So know that as well.
That's a good
Sorry,
point.
Joe.
It's good to have a copy of that with bookmarks and um, and quick arms reach, because you're going to get questions through the course of the year. And don't be afraid to lean into HR to help you answer some of those questions. And then we talked about in this slide of movers and shakers and begin scheduling meetings. Those movers and shakers could be your to Tessa's point, some of the union representation on the site, could be your parent leaders, for site council. And PTA and those kind of things. So you might want to be considering how you could start to have conversations with them too, and then think about what those meetings are going to look like over the course of the year. And then that bullet point of schedule the calendar for the year, there's a lot that's embedded into that. But thinking about not only your ongoing meetings that you're going to have, your staff meetings, different subcommittees and those kind of things, but even a scope and sequence as much as possible for your staff meetings. That might change and evolve over time, but that way your staff has an idea as you start to have conversations in August about what we might be discussing in October. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily mean what you're discussing in May, but kind of starting to develop a plan, the scope and sequence. I've seen some people color code those things, but you just want to start planning out what your regular meetings are going to look like. And then working with your leadership team to determine, basically some of your MTSS components. What are you going to be looking at in terms of your site goals, how data is going to be monitored, how students are going to be, assessed, what's intervention, and those kind of things that are going to look like, which we're going to talk a little bit more about on this slide. Really looking at your cost teams, SSTs, SARB, making sure your referral systems are in place, because that's going to come fast as soon as your beginning of the year assessments start to come in, your universal screeners, making sure that you have some of those systems in place. And ideally, there should be systems in place so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel as you start off. I would definitely recommend using the systems that you do have in place. And then looking at, just the different tiers that you have in place, familiarity with your school's CCCOE plan, so that there's kind of some conscious effort in terms of what goals that were established last year, and how those are being implemented. So you're not forgetting about those entirely until it's time to write a new site plan. So be thinking about that. And again, data that you're going to use to monitor that, and be aware of. I think this is still on me for a little bit more, Tess. Then you're going to come in, just double checking our time and our
No, go ahead.
slides here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you're coming.
Fine.
Okay. Actually, I think this one is yours.
Oh, all right. The most important meeting that you're going to have is that back to school night, because you're showcasing your school. And if you're new, that is an important piece, because you're doing it to the community as well as working with your staff in getting this, getting this together. So be sure to, not only with your back to school night, have everything ready to go, organize, and have your staff be involved in putting it together. Like Joe said, I'm just going to do some of the highlighted piece, get in your classrooms and build that trust, and leave your positive notes. That's an important piece. Another important piece, which with the classroom, is also check in with your secretary. Of all the people that can kill you in a job, is your secretary. build that trust with her or him first. And your office staff, because they become important, as well as your custodial staff. These are key people that are part of your site leadership. Meet with them regularly and meet with them in the beginning, because they know everything about the school that you may want to know culturally. And then, of course, begin your weekly staff letters, bulletins, and emails. Those are key. Your social media becomes a piece that, again, advertises your school and who you are and what your school is about. Always positive, post positives about your school through social media. If something wonderful happens, or if a teacher is being praised for something professionally, or a student, make sure that you have some way of advertising them. And then the last slide is everything that you've learned in your walkthrough, in your listening, and in your putting your information together. Put it together in such a way where it is shared out. Share out your findings. Your findings will be what you found to be the celebrations of your school, and what your community and staff have found to be maybe something that may be opportunities for next steps. And that's where you start with, here are the next steps in advancing the school's vision and focus for the year. And then importantly, the celebration with staff and community in meetings, website, social media. That's real important to put out there, and in some way to do it in a community event. Whether you do it at back to school night, here are the wonderful things, or quarterly, make sure that it's always celebrated in some way that gives it the platform where everyone is involved. And so those are some of the key pieces as we move through. And then closing thoughts are yours, Joe.
Yeah, and I'm just to wrap up on what Tess shared there. Think of like all those empathy interviews and one-on-ones as like your universal screener that you've started to engage with. And just like when, the old days when we used to give out assessments at the school site, we weren't always sure where these, district assessments went. Now I think we're much more in tune with what the assessment data is being used for. So I think Tess has a good point of being transparent of, gosh, I've had the chance to meet with many people, maybe not everybody. But in that, I've learned so much about the culture of our school, so much about what people love about it, so much what people want to see, kept here, and some opportunities for growth for us. So I think it really shows that you've done your homework and you've been diligent about that. Which goes to the first bullet point, is just a common error that we see when we're coaching folks. I don't know if error is the right word, because I know it's well intended, is just, new leaders wanting to go in and change systems and change processes, change everything, it seems like, to a degree, which causes a lot of unrest and stress for the staff. Now, if there is something that seems like low-hanging fruit, and it's come up time and time and time again, there's this cone that's in the parking lot that seems to be creating havoc for everybody. If we just move that cone forward 10 feet, it's going to create just, perfection for everybody, then great, do it. But, anytime you're looking at making some sort of change, I definitely would elicit some feedback from your leadership teams, be they departmental or grade level, and just be okay with observing and spending most of your time focusing on building relationships. The second thing I would just iterate is it takes a team. So you're going to have amazing people on your site, but as much as possible, where you could find fellow administrators that maybe work at other sites or in other programs that you could kind of run some things by that aren't always your supervisor. You could always go to your supervisor, and if you're in the program, your coach. But it's nice to have some other administrators where you have some behavioral concern come up and you're like, gosh, this clearly doesn't warrant, a suspension. I'm trying to look at a restorative practice I could put in place. I'm going to call so-and-so over at, so-and-so middle school and just kind of brainstorm with them a little bit. Hey, what do you think about this? I just would strongly encourage you to find that, or someone who's written a SIPSA plan, someone who's done a SARB meeting, someone who's willing to share those resources. It makes your job so much easier when you're not working in that silo. And to that note, it's okay not to know the answer. It's another common, I think, imposter syndrome that we all fall into as new administrators, thinking that you need to know everything. It's okay to say, all right, I hear your question. Let me find out and I'll get right back to you. Whether it's a parent, a student, or a staff member, It's okay to do that. Just make sure that you follow up, and you're going to learn along the way to find who that is. And you might need some help to navigate through the central office as to who that might be to help direct you to the answer. And this probably should be the first one, but we just wanted to make sure that we left it as our final note, is to make sure to take care of yourself. I know we overuse that oxygen mask analogy on the airplane, but you truly do need to make sure you're drinking enough water, that you're taking the time to eat, that you're getting the rest, that you're not checking your emails at 2 o'clock in the morning, because it is a marathon doing this work, and you really need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in order to achieve that long-term success. So I know we're right over time here. Tess and I will be sharing this link in the chat, but you're welcome to contact either one of us with any questions, or just even some words of encouragement or whatever it might be. We're happy to help support and talk to you about that. And then last but not least, we want to put a little plug in for our next session. It's going to be one of 2 parts that we're going to have featuring our Assistant Superintendent of HR, Dr. Hector Galicia. He'll be talking about ways to build a cohesive team, and also ways to build those professional relationships, especially with your labor partners, and then also getting you started and ready for the evaluation process. What are some tips and tricks that he has for the evaluation process for our certificated, classified, and administrative staff?